All right, ladies. Well, welcome to the I Am Her Empowerment and Impact Summit for Career Women. And today I have a gift for you. We are going to get our ass in gear. I have Miss Carrie Gallant with me today. How are you, ma'am?
I'm really well. Yourself, Kourtney?
I am great. I want to introduce you to the ladies. Miss Carrie is a dynamic speaker, leadership coach, and pay equity advocate. Carrie's experience as an executive, former practicing lawyer, and adjunct law professor informs her work in helping clients master the art and science of negotiation, conflict resolution, and conversational intelligence. That's nice. Carrie's Art of Negotiation for Women approach is featured in author Tara Moore's global online leadership program, Playing Big, as well as Cosmo Magazine, Goop.com, The Globe and Mail, The Financial Post, and CBC Radio. As Chief Legal Counsel to the Ontario Pay Equity Commission, she was invited by the White House to speak at a Department of Labor conference on women's equality. Welcome, Miss Carrie, superstar.
Thank you, Kourtney.
Oh my goodness gracious. When you know the company you keep, it's a great thing. You don't always have to know everything. You just need to know the people that know what they know and be able to
Right.
those people in their capacities. So it is awesome to get to know you. Thank you for being on the summit. I greatly appreciate you sharing with us.
Well, it's my pleasure, Kourtney, and thank you so much for inviting me.
So how do we amplify our ask? Why is negotiation so important for women?
Well, it's a great question, and it's there's two parts to that, of course. Why is it so important to women? Well, we've seen so much of the energy coming out in the last couple of years, the attention to the gender pay gap in North America, and as well in Europe as well. And when I was counsel to the Pay Equity Commission back in the 90s, our work there was all about the pay gap too, and about equal pay for work of equal value. So different jobs, but where there were equal value to the organization, the legislation, which was groundbreaking at the time. It was the first in the world. So it was exciting to be involved with that. It was about different jobs. Equal pay for equal work was already kind of a standard, and yet we still see that so much today. I talk to women today, many women who are still coming and finding themselves, they're doing the same job as a man next to them and discover that he's being paid a lot more. Now, there's a lot of different factors that can be going into that. Just as we knew back in the early days of pay equity, there are lots of factors that go into why the wage gap is the way it is, and it continues to persist. And part of that I've discovered over the last decade or so, and the research bears it out, is that there's a component that we can individually exercise. So I'm all for having great legislation that supports us in achieving our goals and to level the playing field in all areas. And that legislation has a great role in being able to shift societal expectations, because that's one of the things that does hold us back, is all that history and ideas about what a woman should do and what a woman's worth. And so legislation can help shift us that way, just the same way that it helped us start to wear our seatbelts all those years ago, right? We had to click it. What was the slogan? It was click it. That's right. Click it or ticket. And so that started to get into our mindset and help to change things, the same way that hashtag Me Too and hashtags around gender pay gap is starting to really get a lot of attention to it. So there's lots of different ways. What I like talking about with negotiation is I realized that negotiation in my own story, way back when I started, it was the same thing. I didn't negotiate. I didn't ask for more when I heard the recruiter say, and that's the best we can do, when she made me the offer. And I was so excited to get offered this wonderful job that I said yes, and didn't even think that I could ask in that moment. And then discovered later that a man that was hired at the same time as me and two other women, by the way, who also did not ask, that we found that he was paid a lot more than us. Now, the good news in my story is we were able to negotiate all of that and close that gap. That's another story for another time. And actually, it is part though about why it's so important. Like if we aren't negotiating, one of the things we know that the wage gap, it starts early in our careers. And so that can start with our first job, and it can get perpetuated in our next promotion, and how people see us. Because if we are here in our salary and someone else is here at a higher level, our natural thinking, looking on that situation can be, oh well, he must know what he's doing because he's being paid more. She must not know quite as much or not be as credible or as promotable. So we start to see that by accepting a lower salary, it's not just about the current money. It's about the next opportunity. It's about how it positions us. So it and you know, also the research has shown that there is a disconnect for women. So for men, if they're however good they are as a negotiator, let's say they're a 2 or they're an 8 out of 10 in their skill set for negotiation, it's going to be the same. They're going to apply that same skill set to negotiating on behalf of their organization, and they will do the same for themselves. So it's the same across the board. But the research shows that for women, that's not the case. And
But
this
what's the
bears
problem?
out. Right. It bears out anecdotally. Everyone I talk to, I have talked to senior women lawyers. I have talked to even women who do negotiating for a living, like many lawyers or salespeople. They might be the top #1 salesperson for their organization, but they'll tell me, but you know what? I couldn't negotiate my own way out of a paper bag when it comes to negotiating for myself. And the research bears this out, that there's a disconnect between when we negotiate for someone else versus when we negotiate for ourselves. So, and when I share that with women, I see a lot of nods around the room. So I can imagine that a lot of your listeners are thinking, oh yeah, I can relate to that. So there's a disconnect between how we operate when we're negotiating on behalf of others. So one key for being able to amplify our ask is to mitigate that, what's known as a gender trigger. It's one of 3 gender triggers that research has shown, is that idea of negotiating for ourselves. You know, you could simply act as if you are negotiating for someone else. Think about someone who's really important to you. Might it be your sister, might be your mother, might be your daughter, might be your son. So imagine that you're negotiating on behalf of someone else, and that can trick your brain and dispel the anxiety and allow you to apply all those great skills that you already have in being able to negotiate for others to yourself. That's one way to do it. Another way I say about that can really help you amplify your ask is what's really important in any negotiation, and I believe it's super important for women, and my clients share this with me, how much it's meant to them, is clarity, is really getting clear on a few things. One is, what is it that you really want out of this negotiation, right? Even getting clear on what you want for dinner, owning what you want. And so, Kourtney, this is another place where I see there can be a disconnect for women, because we're not we're not taught societally, we're not taught growing up, either in our core caretaking structure or in our schools, or as young girls, we're not taught to want. We're not rewarded for having our own wants. We're rewarded for helping others get what they want. And again, this is where we start to see that disconnect between negotiating on behalf of others and negotiating for ourselves. So we come back to getting clear on what you really want. So when I work with my clients, I have a whole series of things that we go through in order to help them clarify what they want in that negotiation. And it's also that bigger picture thing around, what do you really want in your life and then in your career? And the more solid and clear you are about those goals for yourself, that can really help. And then when you take it into the situation about a negotiation, is really getting clear about what it is you want to get out of the negotiation. And that doesn't have to just be about money. It can be about, how do you want to feel? Where do you see yourselves at the end of this negotiation? What is it that you want to have happen? And also, as important, Kourtney, can be, what do you not want to have happen, right? Getting clear on those boundaries where it's important to you. So clarity is a really big part. And then the other part about that clarity is then also, can be a tricky part, is getting clear about what value do you bring to the table, so that you can have something to offer the other side, because negotiation is about an exchange of value in whatever form that takes. And so being clear on what your worth is, and that's not necessarily, it's not strictly about the personal self-worth, and sometimes that does come in, it does come into play there, but it's also about what is it that you're worth in that negotiation, what value are you bringing to that situation. So there's a couple of areas, and I hope that answered your question, Kourtney.
How did you become so passionate about negotiating this whole arena? To me, it sounds like it is in every area of our lives. So how did you, become so passionate about this specific topic?
Well, it's an interesting story. Well, although I'm a former lawyer and I did practice law, I was counsel at the Pay Equity Commission. But before I was counsel there, I actually started out as a mediator. So I started my law career rather than as a litigator or a solicitor style representing clients. I went to work for the government, and then I ended up helping organizations, so unions and employers, or employers and their non-union employees. I help them to resolve and find a way to come together in developing their pay equity plans. So I learned that I was actually helping them negotiate. You know, they were tasked with negotiating and figuring out how they were going to bring this into play. And where they couldn't resolve it, then I was brought in, or my colleagues were brought in as mediators to help them resolve that. So I already had that idea around what negotiation was all about. And then as I shared my story with you, when I went through that experience, I realized, oh, I hadn't negotiated. The other women that were with me hired at the same time, we realized, the only difference why we had this gap between us was we were presented with the same salary dollar offer, but he asked for more and we didn't. And so we started to think, well, what is that about? And then we realized that we responded very differently to that. That's the best we can do. We saw that as no, right? And there's a tip. No doesn't always mean never. It means no right now. It means no to what the current moment is. And what he did was he pushed past that no. Think of it as a stop sign. It's not a wall that you can't go past. It's a stop sign. And what do we do when we come to a stop sign when we're in traffic, Kourtney?
We're just supposed to, let me say, stop all the way, because I got pulled over.
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
a rolling stop. It's
Yeah.
a stop and a pause and then proceed.
Right. Look both ways and think, okay, I can proceed, so let's go, right? And so if that's a stop sign, if that's a no, that's the best we can do, was a kind of a no, right? Is to say, oh, okay, I'm going to pause here and think, oh, what could I do next? If I look both ways, what can I do next? Well, I can go back and I say, well, what about this? And then keep the conversation going. The reality is that in all of our negotiations, and even in that job negotiation situation, 90% of the time, the other person is coming to the table with a range of things that they're willing to accept, that's going to be acceptable to them. It's not just the one thing that you're talking about. And so what he understood and what we didn't in that moment was, well, that doesn't satisfy what I'm looking for. And so what I really need is this. And I'm not sure exactly what he said in that moment, but he certainly got more than we did by pushing past that stop sign and continuing to go on.
Okay.
Oh, so that to get back to your question, so those two things together really made me passionate about negotiation when I realized that my story was kind of universal. When I read the research in 2004 from Linda Babcock and Sarah Lashover, when they published that book, Women Don't Ask, I was like, wow, this is solid research. And it's been repeated in the decades since then. That research has been repeated over and over again. Yes, we've seen some shifts happening as women are becoming more savvy, as society is becoming more aware that this is an issue. We're seeing some movement in there, and we still have that to be the case. I know that because of the work that I do with my clients, that many women are still coming to me and saying, hey, this happened to me. What do I do now? Or how do I not have that happen? What do I need to do to build my toolbox so I can be ready for that? So that's what makes me so passionate, Kourtney, is I really want to see this. There's lots of areas in the world I'd love to see change, and this is one that I know that I can help with. So that's what makes me passionate about it.
So this whole scenario is just of going there to the interview, and he says, okay, but I need this. He was prepared
right
for that situation. The women, we just go in and say, okay, what do I get? What are you going to give me? But he's like, okay, you're going to offer me something, but I know all of the things that I need, and I need you to check off more. And so he was just prepared for the situation.
Right.
And I can see how when you were saying stop, it's like when you tell a child stop, to them that means no.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do anything else. No. And I think I could see how we took that on as we can't do anything else, but he didn't have that situation. He said, okay, you said this, but I need this. Let me check this off. So he understood stop. No, didn't mean like you can't proceed anyway. He was just prepared. So that's a really good point to point out. Be prepared when you go in.
Right.
What else do you want besides salary? You need to go in with a range. They have a
Yes.
range. It's not just one number. They have a range. You have a range. You have benefits that you need. Think about those benefits that you need to have checked off. So that's
Absolutely.
something to keep in mind. Does that work for raises as well, or just getting a job?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It works in the promotion when you're going up for your annual review, and there's an opportunity for promotion, or even just as you say, a raise for the next year when you're having your salary review. Absolutely, these are techniques or tips to apply there too. Is to know what it is you're looking for. Then when you're researching something like in a job negotiation area, whether it's a new job or promotion or review time, is to take a look at all those things. Take a look at what you bring to the table. What's your experience been in the past year? What is it that you could? What is it you could also be looking at? What could be possible for you elsewhere? So if we're looking, and it doesn't mean you have to have an offer in hand or anything like that. It's just look outside your current world and look at what value you bring to the current situation, and what value is that externally. How are you helping things? How are you helping things matter? What results are you bringing? Some of those can be hardcore. And Kourtney, I want to go back to what you were talking about. It's not just about the salary dollars. The salary is important for the reason I said as well, because it positions you as promotable. It positions you as to what you're bringing to the table. So it is important from that perspective, as well as what it brings into your own life financially. And make sure that you're looking at all those other things that are important about what makes you successful in that role. One of those things can be all the things that you want, could be things that you need. And sometimes there's a difference between what we want and what we need. And as women, we tend to focus only on the need word. I need this in order to bring home today. I need this in order to be able to feed my children. But what is it that you want? I
Right.
keep coming back to that because it's an important thing to be thinking about it, because it's up here. It's your aspiration. It's what are you aspiring to? Those are wants, and how can that be fulfilled there? So one of the things, Kourtney, I want to make sure that people understand too is think about what you need to be successful. Back in that research that I mentioned earlier, it starts there, and I've heard this replicated over and over again. One of the things that the women in that research were not asking for, and the men was support. So the men in that situation were coming to the table expecting that they were going to have a support person, an admin assistant, to do the work for them. Now, this was taking place in an academic situation where they were applying for to be a part of faculty, right? Well, if you know anything about academia, a faculty position has a lot of committee work. And they also, of course, they're getting rewarded on their research applications and their research that they're doing, as well as the teaching. Well, it's hard to do all those things at once,
I was
right?
just gonna say, because as
Yeah.
women, we try to take on everything.
Uh-huh.
They know, and then we feel overwhelmed, and then we're just,
Right.
oh my gosh, I can't get everything done. You can't see past this point because you're so focused on that
Exactly.
need and not what you want. So
Right.
that's very good.
Yeah. And so we need to be asking for more support for our ability to do the job to the utmost level that we want to be able to achieve it. And often we can't you can't do that in the academic world if you're busy having to do all the admin work for your committee because you only have a quarter of an assistant versus the guy down the road or anybody else who has a full-time assistant. That's big dollars. That's a big worth, because we're being pulled off in too many directions, trying to do too many things. And rather than being able to focus our energy on the things that we're really gifted at and where we can really bring our value and our genius. And that's where we need to focus more of our time and energy.
That's very good. What is it about negotiation that freaks so many of us out?
Wow.
Is it going to be like hearing the word no, or?
Mm. I think, yeah, I definitely the word no, or its cousins, as I say, like that's the best we can do, or we're not going to be able to do that today. We don't have it in the budget. I always say, look behind that. Look both ways and consider what else is possible out there, and just test the boundaries around it. And related to that, Kourtney, I think that really freaks people out, and what I hear a lot is fear of rejection. And right? And so
Yeah.
one of the most common questions I get when I'm asked to speak about negotiation, and particularly to women, is, but what if they pull the offer off the table?
Good question.
Right? So that fear of rejection. Well, first of all, I want to say, give your head a shake, because if they're going to pull the offer off the table simply because you asked for more money, is that really a place you want to work at?
Right.
Right? Secondly, it's so rare that that will happen. Yes, I have heard of circumstances where that happens, but when I look behind and when I ask questions about what else happened, what
Right.
you often discover is the reason it was pulled off the table was because of, there was a disconnect anyway during the negotiation. I often say that, when somebody offers you a job, that's the moment when you have the most leverage to be asking for more, because
Mm.
hey, they really want you, right? They've already decided that you are qualified for the role, that you are the person that they want to make the offer to. If we look at it in the dating analogy, this is the moment when the person on the other side has said, I'm into you, let's go out, right? Or let's get married, or whatever it is. They've said yes to you by offering it to you. So you have the most leverage at that moment to be able to ask for more. So it's extremely unlikely that they will pull the offer from the table simply because you did ask for more.
Mm.
And so often it can be about, being too aggressive or reaching so high that it just makes it like, oh, well, this isn't even part of the game for them. They take themselves out of the game because they see that you're not really in the game,
Mm.
because you pitched your offer just too high. Now, I'm all for being aspirational, but you want to be that part of your research too, is to think of, is there a match? Because ultimately we're after, is there a match in this situation? So what I read from those situations that I know of where people have experienced that is because there really wasn't a match. The match wasn't there. I also say that no deal is usually better than a bad deal, right? No deal is better than a bad deal. So if that would be a bad deal for you, what they're offering you, and you're asking for more because it doesn't fit what you've already determined you want and you need in order to accept their offer, then that's okay. It just means there wasn't a match.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that's what gets people anxious, especially women. We do not like rejection, right? And that's historical. It's in our DNA, because if a woman was rejected historically, like beyond the last 100 years or so, it was past survival, right? We didn't have a means of surviving because we've only had the last 100 years or so when we've been able to be in the workforce. There was a workforce and been able to make our own money. Heck, it's only been in just over the last quarter century that women in North America were able to get credit, their own credit.
Wow.
1976, I think, was when women in Canada and the US were able to hold their own credit cards and get a loan at the bank under their own name without a cosigner. So this is in our DNA that I think that we have we all have an intrinsic fear of rejection from society. And I think this is another level for women that we feel it in a whole other way for that.
Wow. So just make sure your counter offer is something that's reasonable from research, not totally way out. That is just like, okay, you're beyond. So they then pull it. But when you said they pulled the deal, in my head, it's like I heard there was something going on before the offer got pulled. It could have been,
Right.
the bad attitude, too aggressive.
Right.
The counter offer was way out there beyond what they could do. And you probably had some type of idea that it was going to be, and you just
Yeah.
wanted to push the envelope. So then I could see it being pulled. Very
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah. And just to reaffirm one thing there, Kourtney, the other thing is too, is if you've done your homework on that clarity and you know where it is you want to go, then your offer might be too high beyond what they're prepared to entertain at all. And again, that's okay if that's what you've already decided that you want. It just means that employer can't meet you for what you want. And that's okay. And that it's being prepared for that moment that can be a tough one, but that's the key. And it's the word you mentioned earlier, is about having that preparation. So that's what that's all about.
Right. I think sometimes we only think about, well, what if I'm not a match for them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But don't go, to me, that's like not a victim mentality, but you lower yourself and your
Right.
standards. You're worthy of rejecting someone's offer. So
Absolutely.
don't just think of it as, oh, they don't think I'm good for them. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to turn down your offer. That's not good enough for me.
Right.
if they
Yeah.
can't meet you and what you require because you're worthy of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Courtney. And so what I often say is, that the word no is tricky especially for many women on both sides. It's tricky to receive it and to be able to go past that stop sign, look both ways and keep going. And it's also tricky for women to deliver it, to know how to say no. There's a great way to think about saying no that leaves because it keeps, I think one of the reasons is we fear that the relationship will not be intact if we say no, whether it's to our partners, whether it's to the recruiter on the other side of the table, or whether it's sending food back at the restaurant that didn't come as we ordered it.
Right.
Being able to say no is a key skill. And you're right about that. It's about knowing what you're worth before you even come to the table. Know what's good for you. And you are worthy of saying no to something that doesn't work for you. No deal is better than a bad deal for you.
Right. It's like the no runs deep. For women,
Ah,
no
yeah.
isn't just no, it's no, and what else am I losing? What else am I missing out? What else will I not have? Is another relationship threatened? Am I not going to have a connection that's going to lead me to somewhere else? So I think for women, that no isn't just a no stop. It's a no, how does it branch off, and
Yes.
what am I not going to happen because of it?
Yeah. Good point.
Awesome. Sheryl Sandberg said that women need to be communal when we negotiate. Michelle Obama said women need to negotiate hard. Which is right. It seems like there's a contradiction there.
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, and I love that you positioned the two of them together because I mean, these are both powerful women that have powerful voices, and I would say they're both right and for different reasons. When Sheryl Sandberg, she even said recently that she hates that she has to say that. That women, something along those lines, I don't have it exactly right, but when she says that women need to negotiate communally, and it's partly it's kind of like I say it's like this is like dealing with where we are right now in our history, dealing with where we are right now in terms of what society's expectations are for how women should be or how we can behave. Sorry, let me rephrase that. How if we put ourselves communally, we do better. So the research is showing that currently that women, whether we're in a position of leadership, whether we're asking for more money, when we position ourselves the same way that men do, we don't do as well. But when we because there's expectations about how women should behave, but when we position everything around how can we work? And we actually is a great word in any negotiation. From a conversational intelligence standpoint that you raised earlier, we helps to trigger things in our brains around trust. It helps to position us and the other person together, that we're together in this together. So how can we come to an agreement on this? That's an example of language that would be more communal, or things around promotion time, or if a woman is able to position her success in the guise of how position her own individual success in relation to the team that she's working with, or the team that she's leading, for example. That's another way of thinking about how we can speak communally. It's one way that we can increase our leverage and how we position ourselves within the boundaries of how society currently expects women to be, which is to be for others, right? That we do better when we negotiate on behalf of others. So let's use that to our advantage in using it in communal language. Now, when Michelle Obama says we need to negotiate hard, I mean, she tells a story that's very similar to my own, right? That even as a lawyer, when she had her first job, she didn't occur to her to negotiate either. And she said that in Parade magazine last year, and that's where she first said, women, we don't negotiate hard. Now, what does she mean by hard? And I think what she means by hard is what I've talked about is actually firm. It's like being firm about what it is you've already committed to that's important to you, what it is that you want and need out of this negotiation, and being persistent. That to me is about what Michelle Obama is talking about when she says negotiate hard. You can negotiate hard and be communal at the same time, right? It's how you position what you're wanting to achieve within a communal type of a framework, as well as being persistent. When I talk about with my clients about getting clear on what it is that you want. It's also about why it matters to you. And when we can get into that place of how it matters to me because it also matters to others in my life, again, that's moving into that negotiating for others. What's the, when the one thing you think about a mama bear, right? That a mother is one of the hardest persons to negotiate with if she's negotiating on behalf of her child. Don't get between a mama bear and her cub, right? And so that's where the negotiate hard can really come into play, to be firm. That kind of idea of the velvet, the iron fist in the velvet glove. This is the firm, this is the hard, this is committed to your outcome that you want to achieve. And then the velvet glove is the how you do it, right? How you say it, how you position it communally, use communal language. We don't have to be aggressive in negotiation. In fact, most research shows that aggressive negotiators do less well than collaborative or cooperative approach negotiators.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. I know when someone tries to force me to do something, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
You can
right? We don't like to do things that we're told to do, whether we're children or whether we're adults. Having somebody impose a solution on us usually meets with resistance, internally and externally. So that communal language can work for men too. And it definitely works more for women than trying to be trying to fit that image of the aggressive top-down leader or top-down negotiator. Usually doesn't fit very well. So don't bother trying on that suit of clothing.
Can negotiation help women in other situations beside negotiating salary?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you start to raise your awareness about when negotiation might actually be happening and you're not even aware of it, I bet you could find that several times a day you're actually in a situation where you're negotiating for something. You're looking to influence a result. You're looking to influence a change, whether it's a change in behavior, or a change in outcome, or even to change the way someone else is thinking or approaching something. We're trying to influence, and influence and negotiation are very close sisters, right? They're part of the same thing. So you might be going, with your partner and trying to figure out what to do for the day. That's an influencing situation. And when you're bringing your own wants and desires into it, as well as listening to the other person's, what they're trying to figure out for themselves. And then ideally we're trying to come to an agreement on what it is we're going to do for dinner, what we're going to do for the rest of the day. I was just having that conversation with my husband earlier today. But what are we going to do after lunch? When you're done, you tell us on it. So that's a negotiation.
Right.
Negotiating at work happens all the time. Who's going to pick up the next project? If you want to be in front of somebody new, or you're looking to advance your career and move to the next level, what are the steps that you need to take? Perhaps you're looking to negotiate some professional development. There's a great new opportunity that's come up and you want to be able to go to this training course. So you want to go in and have a conversation with your manager about that, and being able to position that, and being able to negotiate that this is something that's good for the organization because of what you're going to bring back. That's another type of negotiation. Buying a car, going to your financial advisor. I mean, there's some places where we're actually not thinking about negotiating or influencing. That can be at your doctor's office, right? How is this? Go ahead.
I was just saying that's very true. How can you help me get better without taking pills is my thing. Like, I don't want to take pills. Can we do therapy? Right. What can we do? So that is negotiating.
Right. And that's you being clear about what it is you don't want to have happen, right? As well as what you do want to have happen. So that's a great example, Kourtney. I was just talking about this the other day with a group of people, a crowd of about 150 people. We were talking about everyday negotiations, and they happen everywhere.
They do. I am in a challenge, and one of the things was about pushing past your fear. So the challenge was to go and hug 10 people you didn't know. And I know for me, just because of how I am, I'm like, okay, let's just do it on a piece of paper, that I have a 10 hug challenge, and let's go. And the point being, as an entrepreneur, you take on people telling you no as something internal about you, and it's really not, versus when you're doing it for a business. What I found was that when I asked people, I said, could you do me the favor of, being one of my 10 people. I have 20 minutes to do it, shop, and get back home. And they wanted me to explain, why wouldn't people hug you? Most people are nice. What is this about? What is that? So it was more informational, not necessarily negotiating, but what if I would have said the wrong thing? Oh, I'm just a pervert and I just want to hug people. Then they'd be like, no. But it was amazing to see people just wanting that information. So when you were talking, negotiation needs to have information to support your point of view and what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
What you want.
Yeah, and I love that example, Kourtney, because I love one of the things that you did there, even by positioning it as, could you do me a favor? I would say that is an influencing and negotiating situation, and you're already positioning it almost communally, because you're inviting them into what it is you're wanting to achieve by inviting them into your world by asking them if they could do you a favor. And that invokes this reciprocal idea, right? That you're asking them for something and they're going to get something out of it as well by doing you a favor.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the number one benefit for women learning how to negotiate?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, aside from the financial, that can be the outfall. I mean, not every negotiation is with respect to money. I would say the number one benefit is confidence. And I hear this over and over again, whether it's from the clients that I work more closely with, or it's women who hear me speak about this and go away and try something out. And then they come back to me and say, I tried out that thing you talked about in your talk and it worked, or even though I didn't get what I wanted, I feel so much more confident. I know I can do it again. And that's the thing, right? Is when we learn to drive, we learn to come to that stop sign, as you say, full stop, look both ways. Can I proceed? Where can I proceed to? And off we go. We get more confidence the more we do it. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we see all those everyday negotiations, because the last thing you want to do is show up for a high stakes negotiation, like a job negotiation, not having thought about negotiation before that day or before the moments you're preparing for it, because that raises your anxiety level right up into the throat, and then your throat gets caught and you say yes automatically. Yes, exactly, right? And so when we practice it more mindfully and more consciously every day, we build that skill set, that's when the confidence comes. And that's when you know that when the high stakes moments are coming about and you do your preparation, you're going to feel a whole lot stronger, and you're going to be able to have that firmness, right? And wrap it in that velvet glove and do that delivery. And you're going to feel a whole lot better about what it is you're doing too.
Absolutely. Because you're just reaffirming yourself that you can do this. And then you have all that data to tell your brain, see, we know what we're doing. We've done this before. This is nothing new. This is just another situation. Let's go do this.
Exactly.
Awesome. How can our participants go about learning how you teach the art of negotiation? How do they get in contact with you?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Well, there's a couple of ways you can get in contact with me. First of all, I'd invite you to come on over to my website, which is gallantleader.com. That's GALLANT leader.com. And I do a lot of, I do some blogging from time to time. I do some webinars around negotiating for women as well as other leadership issues. And I also invite them to download the free Earn Your Worth checklist that I'm providing, Kourtney, your group at I Am Her Summit. And that's a way you can take a look at the 7 signs of under-earning and see, does this apply to me? Now, I also urge you to keep it, because you can use it as a way to go back from time to time and say, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Let me check that list again, because that can apply at different points in our life. Number 1 might apply to you right now, but you can also see how number 6 applied to you 10 years ago. But sometimes these things can come back. And you can stay in touch with me there, and that would be an awesome way to get to know more about that. Yeah, so if people want to sign up for my list through that Earn Your Worth checklist, then we can definitely keep you apprised of what's coming up with that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It has been a pleasure for informing us about getting our ask in gear. So thank you so very much for your wealth of knowledge.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Well, I will make sure that your links are up under your interview so that they can sign up and get more information from you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Kourtney. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Well, stay tuned for more interviews at the I Am Her Impact Summit, and I will talk to you ladies later. Until next time, stay true to the real you. I'm Kourtney Coleman. Bye-bye.